Hey everyone, and welcome to a new segment of what I'm going to call Let Me Know When You Get Home Safe. So, the idea is that I have not been having much time to do these, and well, I got a lot to do when I get home. As you can see in the background, it is snowing, so I will, in addition to doing dishes, making dinner, be shoveling, cleaning off stuff. So I figured what I would do is have you come along with me for the ride home. So I have obviously hands-free, so that I'm not going to be distracted by that. Won't be making too much eye contact because I'll be having my eyes on the road. I have the four-wheel drive on for a little extra control and power. I have the wipers on, the car is cleaned off, and let's get out of here. So, one thing I like to do is I pull out, making sure obviously that there's nobody in or around me in the parking lot, is just to give the road a little bit of a test by gunning the engine and seeing how badly I slip before I get onto the road. So I did definitely drift a little bit there, so I am glad that I have the everything engaged. And real quick, I do want to get back to, this is a constant complaint of mine, is getting on the road and seeing all of these people out here that do not have their car cleaned off. That is just super not cool. You might just think that it only affects you, but it actually affects all the other cars on the road. I can't count the amount of times that I have been driving, even from a very far distance from behind people. Because obviously, if you're driving in snowy conditions, this is a Nick 101, so I'm probably going to be giving you a couple of driving tips for driving in the snow, because I have for quite a while, most of my life actually. So, obviously don't tailgate too closely behind a car when there's bad weather conditions out. But even if you're, multiple car lengths behind, and you get up to, anywhere between 40 miles per hour to highway speeds, there is a chance of a chunk of snow and or ice flying off your car and hitting the car behind you. Shattering the windshield, just getting underneath the tire and causing the person to lose a little bit of control. Any number of things. So if you are going to go out driving in the snow, please, I beseech you, for not just yourself, but for your fellow drivers, clean off your car. I've been guilty of it in the past, and one thing that it can actually do is impede your vision. Once the snow starts to melt on the roof, or if you get up to a certain speed, all that snow that's on the front of the car, sorry, not the roof, can come up and then hit the windshield all at once, and it might take a second for your wipers to get rid of them. So definitely do that. And yeah, it's just, you get the ones off the side windows, you have, a good 360 view. I am going to be going underneath the speed limit. Obviously, you should never go above the speed limit anyway, but obviously when the road conditions are not so great, you could go anywhere. It seems like if it's really, really bad conditions, a good 20 miles an hour, as long as you have a car that's pretty decent in the snow, seems to be relatively safe for keeping control. And you can correct if you start to lose control. Now, if you might notice, I am shifting, so I have a standard. And one of the things that's actually great for is, in the event of snowy conditions, you can actually use the shifter to help you out. So obviously one of the most dangerous parts of driving on a snowy road is when you need to take a turn and or slow down, especially if you're going downhill. One thing that you can do with the standard is, if you start going down a icy road, instead of using the brakes, which can easily just cause you to start going into a slide, what you can do is you can downshift. And then, I don't know if you heard that, but then the weight of the engine will actually slow you down without you applying brakes. So there's a lot less chance of you slipping while still maintaining control and going to a slower speed. So drive usually takes about, let's say, roughly around half an hour, depending on how cleared off the roads are. For instance, right now I can go the speed limit because they have not really accumulated that bad yet. I don't know if you can see from your angle, you can't, but maybe if I go up and down some hills you'll notice. But there's very barely a light dusting. I can see that it's not black ice conditions or anything like that. So we can go at a relatively safe speed here, but especially when I start getting into the back roads where there's going to be less likelihood of plowing, I'm going to turn off the windshield wiper, because right now it's such a light snow that right now the windshield wipers are starting to just make the squeegee noise, which is probably not helping the audio, and also just not good for the wipers in general. You usually only want to have them on when they're actually getting water off of your windshield. So as I drive, to explain the absence, I did go on vacation, and I don't really have much to tell from that, because every plan fell apart. So the initial reason for taking it off was to go to a wedding. I don't know if you've tried flying. As of me recording this, it's February 7th, 2022, and problems with the airlines. There's always a risk of getting the airline booked, and then either like the wedding party could come down with COVID or what have you. So we initially took off the time for a wedding, and we just ended up not going. And they completely understood. In fact, quite a few people weren't able to make it. So what they did was a pretty cool idea, which was they just live streamed the event, and even that didn't go well, because no fault to whoever was handling the camera. That was probably a last minute thing and not their fault at all. But the camera the only audio that it could pick up was mumbling, like and anytime the preacher made a joke, you could hear the audience go and other than that, all you could hear was the creak of the camera being adjusted. It was kind of a bummer, but we still at least get to see some of the ceremony. It cut out before they even were able to do the ring exchange, so that was a wash. And we decided, hey, well, while we have the time off, let's not waste it. Let's not just go back to work and work. I mean, how silly would that be? So we decided to try and get together with friends and family, and every one of those fell apart for one reason or another, either due to COVID or other reasons. So it ended up being much more of a staycation than we originally planned, which honestly ended up being okay, because we did get hit with a pretty bad storm, and it was good to be on the property to be able to handle it as it developed. So shoveling, knocking snow off stuff, that and the like. So yeah, unfortunately, not much of an update, but I try not to do these videos if I am home with my girl, because I want to spend time with her. I usually just do these as an exercise when I'm by myself or with Lulu the Loud. So in this case, it was our time together, so I didn't really want to take aside, and even though it's only like 10 minutes, it's excuses that I'm making, because anybody could make 10 minutes. I did a lapse, and I do apologize. So, and I know I'm apologizing more to myself than anything. It's something that I'm trying to do for myself more than anybody, to keep a regular schedule of these. Again, this is an exercise to keep myself accountable. So that's the main reason. Oh, it's coming down a little harder now. And it's that light puffy snow. So here's something that most people aren't aware of, is snow hypnotization. So especially if it's dark at night, you're driving on a straight line, and there's really nothing to look at except for the flakes coming towards the windshield, it can get quite easy to be distracted just by the constant onflux. I liken it to star travel and like the old Star Treks and stuff. The way that the stars move is not how they would move in space in real life. If you were traveling even at faster than light speeds, in real life the stars don't move like that. They're so far apart that they wouldn't really be seen moving in relation to the other. It's always a distraction, and just a minor pet peeve of mine. I understand why cinematically they have to do it that way, but in realistically, if the stars were moving the way that they do in the show, they would be so much closer together and so much smaller that galaxies and the universe itself would be a lot smaller. I digress. That's such a nerdy thing for me to be talking about, but I am going to be ranting and raving. I kind of went into this with no plan other than, well, I'll just have it on while I'm driving. I'll probably talk about some snow driving tips, catch you up on the lack of an update that I have for you, and then just kind of shoot the shit with you for whatever else comes to my mind as I'm driving along. So we'll see how this goes. I'm hoping that I get home, listen to this, and you can actually hear. So I don't know if you heard the. So I upshifted, downshifted. I can never remember. So going down a little bit of a hill to a four-way. The roads seem fine, but one thing that I never really did when I first started driving stick was downshift as I slowed down and letting the weight of the engine take it. So it is a good practice even in general, just so that you can kind of save some wear and tear on your brakes. Obviously you don't want to do too bad of, I heard a little bit of slippage, but not enough for the slip indicator light to come on, so that's good. So that means I didn't really go too far into the intersection. But it is definitely something to be noting, that if you hear a little crunching, sliding when you're going at a very slow speed to a stop sign, then you gotta want to make sure that you're taking any turns and stuff at a relatively slower speed than the recommended speed limit, for sure. Especially if you're making a right turn, because this means that if you do start sliding, you could potentially go into traffic, and oncoming traffic. It's bad enough if you're making a left turn and you slide and then you go into, a telephone pole or somebody's fence, heaven forbid. But going into another car coming in the opposite direction at roughly the same speed that you are obviously makes an accident twice as worse. So, or even more exponentially worse. I'm not sure what the physics are on that, but definitely worse than if you're just crashing into a stationary object, that's for sure. So, it's something to keep in mind. And when that does start to happen, the last thing that you want to do is slam on the brakes. That's going to keep you from controlling the speed even more. If you do have a standard, again, shifting into a lower gear is the optimal way to slow down without slamming on the brakes. But either way, if you are sliding and you're going to go into the fence anyway, hitting the brakes isn't helping anyway. So you're actually better off to ease off the brakes and see if you can get the wheels to make contact with the ground again, and hopefully be able to correct your slide. Another mistake is overcorrecting, because once the wheels do catch and you're already have your wheels at a 45 to 90 degree angle, your car is going to suddenly and very unexpectedly start going in that direction once the tires do get to a place that they can catch on. So you don't want to oversteer as well. So it's just some stuff that you get used to over a lifetime of driving. Some people never seem to get it. Some people, pick it up right away. Thankfully, I learned when I spent my time in the desert, one of the things that I worried about the most coming back is, having spent 5 years not driving in the snow, how good would I be when the first snowfall happened? And thankfully for me, it was just like riding a bike. I immediately picked up on all my good habits that I had created over the years, which was good, because it actually is kind of a funny story. I made the mistake of driving from the desert to the colder area, and it had never occurred to me, but I drove right into a storm. So of course I turn on the windshield wipers. It's freezing to the windshield. I try and use the windshield wiper fluid, and well, in the desert there's no real reason to have antifreeze in your windshield wiper fluid. So when you get to areas where it's going to be cold, at least for some part of the year, you get the pink stuff, you get the orange stuff, you get the stuff that has antifreeze mixed in with it, so that the windshield wiper fluid doesn't freeze in your tank and you can't use it, or worse, it just freezes to ice on top of the windshield. Well, that was an unforeseen thing. So for quite a while, especially during that drive in the snowstorm, all I was able to do was pull over, get a thing of windshield wiper fluid, and then just periodically splash it onto the windshield to maintain visibility. It was not my safest or smartest moment. It makes for a good story after the fact, but obviously that was putting the car and the lives in a bit of peril. So if you are going from different areas, it is highly recommended that you think of things like that, like changing your windshield wiper, draining your windshield wiper fluid, and getting something for the appropriate climate. That could have gone a lot worse. Thankfully, I'm safe and okay. back to turning windshield wipers off because now we're it's a light snowfall, and you go in and out of it. Sometimes it's barely anything, sometimes it's fatty snow, sometimes it's not coming down at all, and that, you know, that's kind of how it is anywhere that you go. When I was in the desert, and it actually was during a period of time for rain, even just a couple blocks down, you could be getting flooded, and then a couple blocks down, there's no cloud above you, and it's just kind of funny how that works with snow as well. And right now we're on a road that people are going about, I'd say about 10 under than they normally would, even though the roads are relatively clear, which is, you know, fine. Ricky Gervais has a great joke about better arriving late than dead. If you haven't seen his comedy special, Humanity, he makes a pretty good joke about that saying. And yeah, thankfully, when it's on the way home, besides, you know, making sure that I arrive in a timely fashion to let out Lulu the Loud so that she can have her pee and or poop if she needs it. You know, I'm not in a horrific rush to get home. I'd rather do it safe, and same thing on the way to work. I would obviously try to leave a little bit earlier if it's snowing, not just because I know I'm going to be going at a slower speed, but just to test the road, see if it's even worth going to work, and if not, making sure that I call out in a timely fashion. But obviously, you know, I live in America, and I, you know, can't stress enough that I'm really happy with how we're having a bit of a revolution with anti-work. It's a misleading, and if you saw the thing on the news with the guy, it kind of stinks. But anti-work is kind of misunderstood, where the subreddit isn't about we just want to sit around and collect paychecks for not doing anything. It's that we've been brainwashed into, you know, we had the most profitable, you know, couple of years when it comes to businesses, and, you know, there hasn't been any increase in pay for the workers. You know, the billionaires pocket it all, and it's just, you know, a gigantic scam, and people are slowly realizing that, you know, you get paid, you know, close to minimum wage for a job that requires 2 degrees, you know, so all this stupid stuff is happening. But one thing that I can't stress enough is I worked in retail for almost 10 years. Even when the road conditions were almost deadly, they would still insist that you come in, even though there's not going to be anybody in the store shopping, because, you know, they're not going to kill themselves just to, you know, grab something that, you know, hey, if it was that much of an emergency, people panic buy just before a big snowstorm every time anyway. So, you know, retail certainly doesn't care about you. Do not, you know, get yourself killed just because a job that doesn't care about you wants you to come in. And thankfully, the new job that I have is completely understanding in that. They know that I've come to work, you know, in snowy conditions. I'm not always going to use this as an excuse not to come in, but I live on a back road that doesn't do very well with getting paved. So usually it's just a matter of the sheer amount of snow. If there's just too much, and it didn't get paved, not paved, towed. Sorry about that. If it didn't get not towed, wow, plowed. Okay. See, this is a good example of people think that you can multitask, but you're not actually multitasking. What you're doing is you're having your attention divide back and forth between 2 things. So right now I'm driving, but I'm also talking, and technically I feel like my attention on the road is you know, uninterrupted, but your brain is technically having like these, you know, a million a minute, but back and forth, like, you know, okay, now go to the mouth, now go to the, you know, eyes on the road, go to the hands, you know, and the feet, you know, and all that. And so it's actually just doing a million back and forths at a time. And obviously, since I'm making sure that my attention's paid more to the road than to the talking, I just called plowing first paving and then towing. So that just goes to show you that, hey, at least my attention is more towards the road than actually talking. But that was kind of a silly mistake that I probably would not have made had I been stationary. And we are coming up to another stop sign. I got way down into gear because this one is a little bit more bad conditions. Looks like they might have dropped some dirt, but other than that, it's not really great at all. And now we're going to come to, you know, a bunch of winding roads, ups and downs, not so great of conditions. So even the road itself, is slightly more cracked and patchy than, say, the main roads would be. And then you combine that with the fact that the previous snowfall that we got started out warm and then went wet. So there was actually some places where, when I drove past, I saw there were puddles, which means now they are sheets of ice underneath the freshly fallen snow. So thankfully I tried to memorize where a lot of those were, but you can't be 100% certain that you memorize exactly where it is. So it's a good idea to definitely go under the speed limit when you've previously scouted out that some conditions are going to be bad. Another infuriating thing is, and I'm guilty of it too because sometimes you can't help it, but it seems like whenever there's snow on the ground, people like to drive in the middle of the road instead of on the side of the road that they should be at. This is for multiple reasons. Most often, that just happens to be the clearest part of the road. Previous people have either been driving down the middle, and that's why, or just the fact that, the center of the road tends to be a little bit less hairy than the sides. So I hate to see it because people, if they see you coming from a straightaway, they'll get into their side and you get into your side when you pass each other. But I see people that coming around a corner, and we're both going at decent speed, and then they have to hardly get into their lane. And a hurried correction, especially during a turn when you're not 100% certain about the road conditions, could easily send you into a slide. And like I said, depending on which direction you're turning, that could spell doom for you. But if you're turning in the wrong way, you just spell doom for the person you just hurriedly overcorrected to not go into. So I do recommend whenever possible that you drive on your side of the road when it's snowy. If you want to drive in the middle during straightaways and stuff, that's completely understandable, especially if the side of the road is really bad. But if you're going to be going into a turn, slow down, not using your brakes, but just slow down before you go into the turn, get onto your side of the road, and take it as safely as you can on your side of the road, because right now it's that twilight time where it's dark enough. First of all, you should have the headlights on whether it's raining or snowing anyway, but it's at that time where it's about a half an hour before some sunset, so all the lights should be on anyway. Most cars have auto lights. Mine doesn't. Almost nothing in my car is automatic, so it's manual, which I enjoy, so that means there's less chance of stuff breaking down. But when it comes to the headlights, they're on, and so if somebody's coming in the other direction, you can see them coming in the other direction. However, it's not so dark that if you can't directly see them yet, that you can see the illumination of the headlights. If you know what I'm talking about, if you're going up a hill and then you suddenly see somebody else's beams that are coming up over the hill, but they're not actually over it so that you can see the lights themselves, well, it's just light enough outside right now still that if I am taking a turn, I can't tell based on headlights whether or not there's a car coming in the other direction. And also, that should never be how you judge how fast you're coming around a corner anyway. I mean, who knows? They could be having issues with their headlights. They may not have them turned on yet. You can't trust that there's going to be somebody else with highly visible beams, which, while we're on the subject, it drives me absolutely bonkers how unregulated the brightness of headlights are these days. It seems like everybody has these just God knows how many lumens on the front of their car, so that it looks like it's their high beams when it's not even their high beams. It drives me crazy because if you don't already know the trick, tip and trick, I tried to say at the same time and it said trip. So just another example of my mouth taking back seat to my driving. But a tip, if you are going in the opposite direction of a car whose lights are just way too bright, and you don't want to lose your night vision. Well, first of all, I have some clip-ons that are the yellow, so it helps preserve your night vision, which I highly recommend. Whether you wear glasses or not, you can get them either just by themselves or as clip-ons. Those do, I feel, help noticeably. But what you do is you look down to the right side of the road. So you keep the right side of the road roughly where it is the whole time. Oh, we're doing another downhill to a stop sign, so we're getting into the lower gears rather than using our brakes. Now we're going up a little bit so we go back into the right gear and let the weight of the car, and then of course a little bit of brake action at the very end. But okay, I don't like this intersection, so I'm going out of it a little fast to make sure that I don't have to wait for a line of 8 cars. I'm not pulling out in front of anybody, but I also don't like to hang around there for too long. But, oh, and now it's changed to a bit of sleety, rainy stuff. And this is just before nightfall, so that isn't good. That means that it's probably going to freeze in certain areas for the morning drive. So that's definitely something that I'll need to make sure to get up a little early tomorrow morning, just to make sure that my drive-in is as safe as possible. What I was saying is, so if the headlights are coming from the other direction, you look, if you can see the white line, basically what you want to do is look at the white line and keep it roughly in the same spot while the car passes by you. That way you're not looking directly at the headlights, your night vision can return faster, and it's just this weird phenomenon where if you do look into the lights, you might not notice it, but you slowly start turning into them even though you feel like you're not. It's a phenomenon that I noticed very early on in my driving. It was pointed out by a passenger and then I read somewhere about the tip of you try and look at the white line as the bright headlights pass by. All right, here we go. So we're getting to nearly the end of the trip. So, like I said, thankfully the roads weren't too bad, so it wasn't too long of a drive. But the last bit's always the hairiest bit. So, to get home is the biggest hills with the least likelihood of being plowed. Worst road conditions, biggest hills. So just because you're almost home doesn't mean that you need to relax. As you know, statistically, the majority of accidents happen very, very close to home, which is so stupid and obvious. It's like, well, of course they do. That's that's when you get into the car, like, a good at least 75% of your time in the car is going to be close to home because you're either going to or getting from it, right? But regardless, it's still an important thing to keep in mind. Just because you're almost home and you might start thinking about, oh, what am I going to have for dinner, or so I had a little bit of a wiggle despite having the 4-wheel drive on and going at a decent speed, so we're going to slow down even more. Not brake slow down, but just ease off the gas and slow down a little bit more. That might have been because I was, all the way onto my side going up a hill and the roads weren't plowed yet, but I did feel a slight wiggle. And important thing again is not to panic. You just try and make sure that you try and stay as straight as possible, as long as you're not going on a on a turn. Ease off of the gas, wheels kick right back in underneath me, and then I just adjusted my speed a little bit to help correct that. But the wheels couldn't have been slipping for longer than a half a second, so I never really had any lack of control. But it was still a nice little warning slither. It was still brief enough that the slip light on the dashboard. I know there's a technical term for it. Whoever is a car person might be screaming at the screen right now, where it's like, no, it's a blank light indicator or whatever. But it's the one that makes it's the back of the car, and then the 2 tracks showing that the car went in an S slide. So that usually comes on if it's a if I'm trying to brake and then the ABS kicks in, or if it's too bad of a slide. So thankfully those were 2 tiny little warning slithers, neither of which resulted in the lights coming on. So overall, a relatively safe journey home. Oh. Case in point, I was going under 10 miles an hour just to turn onto my road, and slowly started to slide, which is why if I do see that there's no cars coming, I do like to try start my turn a little bit early, so that if I do start to slide, I have a couple more seconds to correct before I go into a snowbank. So that was probably the worst slide of the day. I was worried about focusing on maintaining control, so I didn't have a chance to glance down and see if the lights went on. But regardless, that was a pretty obvious one. So now I'm going to be going at a snail's pace, turning into my driveway to make sure that that does not happen again and that I don't crash into anything on my property. But we have arrived safely. Emergency brake up, and that's it. So that is our first episode of Let Me Know When You Get Home Safe. I hope you enjoyed it. It's a bit dark right now, so let's see if that helps. All right, so I hope you enjoyed. I hope a couple of those tips might have helped. If not, thanks for being with me for the trip. And yeah, once this gets uploaded, you'll know for a fact that I arrived home safe. So I appreciate you, and I will see you next time.